Hey, it's Russ. Oh. Hey, here we go. And we're live. It's Russell here from Adelaide West Physio and Pilates. Kim's not quite on the screen. There we go. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming and having a listen to what we're going to say about knee and hip osteoarthritis. We really appreciate you giving up your time because we know that it's very precious. So we promise to make this session as full of useful information as possible. So our plan is for it to be a 30-minute session, but it may go for longer. I can't see it going shorter, so because we've got a bit to say. But as I say, we'll try and make it as useful as possible. This is Kim Wilson, and she will be presenting the information on the current knowledge, I suppose, of knee and hip osteoarthritis, and then for the Q&A part, which we'll have as a second part, we'll do that a bit more together. And so if you've got any questions as you go along, just put them in the chat, and we're really interested in your comments or your questions, because that's what's going to make it the most useful and the most relevant for you, if we can be answering your questions. So and the last thing is that if you're thinking about maybe needing a hip or a knee replacement at some point in the future, if you stick around to the end, we've got something that would be quite useful for you that we've put together. So we'll talk about that more at the end. But I'll hand over to Kim now, and she's going to give you the lowdown on hip and knee osteoarthritis. In fact, all osteoarthritis, but we're focusing mainly on the hip and the knee. So over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Russ. I'm going to just move the camera a little bit so you can see me properly. So basically what I know about osteoarthritis has changed significantly in the last couple of years. And what I want to do today is give you as much information as we can to help educate you on what osteoarthritis is, and also some information on the GLAD program. So let's start with a bit of an introduction onto what OA is, or osteoarthritis, and hopefully, like Russ said, some questions that you would like answers, because that's where we can direct the education basically that best suits you guys. So we have a new version of what osteoarthritis is, but let's talk about what the old version is, which most of you would have heard. It's known as the wear and tear of the joint. It's known as a degenerative condition, which will inevitably worsen with time. You're generally advised to avoid impact exercise and partake in non-weight bearing activities, and generally told that it's kind of a one-way street and you probably will need surgery at some point. The new version of osteoarthritis, which I actually like a lot better, is that osteoarthritis is a mild inflammatory condition which affects the joint but also the whole body. But this process is actually changeable, and although many people have pain and a loss of function associated with OA, they don't actually necessarily have to go hand in hand. So the way I used to treat osteoarthritis, and most physios, is that 5 years ago, I would treat people with a bit of hands-on mobilization, a bit of massage, maybe give them a brace, some ice or some heat, and a few exercises at a low load, and hope that this was going to change things. But basically, it might have given some short-term benefits, but it really wasn't changing things long-term. And I actually truly believed that these people were destined for surgery, and maybe all we were doing was trying to delay that surgery a bit. But I actually don't think this anymore. We now have a new, basically, method of treating knees, and we now know that the joint needs to be moved more than just a little bit to get better. It needs load and it needs compression to actually make significant change and make the body adapt. And we know that this isn't going to make the joint wear out any quicker. And in fact, the cartilage will actually like to be loaded and can become healthier with putting the correct movement through the cartilage. Now, I'll talk a bit more about the cartilage later. But our tissues are actually capable of a lot more than we previously thought. And in fact, we need to put a lot of load through the joint and muscles to actually make them adapt and change. And the worst thing you can do for an arthritic joint is to completely rest it. The Royal Australian College of General Practitioners recommend that diet and exercise as the first line of treatment for osteoarthritis, but amazingly, only 3% of the population actually receive this first line treatment. So the other thing that we know you need to treat osteoarthritis is knowledge. Education is vital, and what you're listening to now is actually the start of that treatment for osteoarthritis. New research shows that osteoarthritis is actually not just about the joint. It's a whole body process which involves the brain, the nervous system, but also the gut. Now, don't lose me here. So the old version of OA is really simple to understand, okay? It's worn out. A plus B equals C. But in fact, it's far more complicated than that. It's an intricate web of all of the letters of the alphabet, all connected in various ways. But the exciting thing about it being so complicated is the fact that this gives us lots of potential to change. And it gives us hope. It's not just a one-way street. So over the last years, a fantastic program called the GLAD program has been developed. And this has been a really great example of the new way of treating osteoarthritis. So let's go back to that cartilage story. So inside your knee, you've got cartilage. There's quite a few different types of cartilage. And we generally think, people often think when they've got osteoarthritis that their cartilage is gone. But there's actually always some cartilage left in that joint. Cartilage is made up of chondrocytes, which are cells in that cartilage, and they're really slow to move. And they actually take 9 months to move about 1 millimeter. But the good news is that with exercise and the appropriate load, we can actually make them speed up a little bit, which is nice. The other thing that's interesting about cartilage is it actually has no direct blood or nerve supply. So the cartilage, I mean, if we had nerves and blood vessels in the cartilage, that actually get squashed by the amount of load that we put through our knees and hips every day. So the cartilage actually relies on the fluid in the knee, the synovial fluid, to get its nutrients. Now the way that it gets this is with movement and load. So if you can imagine a sponge between my hands, and if you squish that sponge and then you release it, the nutrient, the synovial fluid, that lovely lubricating liquid inside the knee, actually gets squeezed into the cartilage. And so we get these lovely cells called proteoglycans that are absorbed into or go into the cartilage, and then they attract water and actually make the cartilage healthier. So this knowledge in itself should really start to change the way that you move. And instead of thinking that you're doing damage to your joint or wearing out your joint when it hurts, maybe you can start thinking about how this is helping your cartilage to get healthier with the movement that you're doing. And that is really important stuff, and really should facilitate you moving through some of those slight painful movements and actually getting some good health going on. The next thing that's really important is talking about weight. So diet and weight loss is right up there in those first line management of osteoarthritis. We've always thought that it's about decreasing the load on the joint, which fits in with that wear and tear model. But what we now know is that it's not just about the mass that we're carrying. Losing weight is connected with better health in numerous different chronic health problems. But what we've actually said, well, there was an article published in 2019 by Runhar and their co-authors that found that changes in diet and exercise resulted in a reduction in pain and an increase in function. Great, yeah, this is exactly what you'd expect. But what they showed was that this change occurred due to a change in the systemic inflammation as opposed to an actual change in your BMI. So systemic inflammation might be a bit of a new term for you, so let's explain it just a little bit. Systemic inflammation is basically a low-grade inflammatory changes that occur to the whole body, and they're not markers that doctors check for in blood tests. These are more subtle than that. And we can get systemic changes in inflammation due to various things, having a virus, being stressed, and they're often really useful, but they generally make us feel a bit rubbish. So in this study, they found that changes in systemic inflammation with diet and exercise, which resulted in decreased pain and an increased function, but in the early stages found no changes at all to BMI. So you were still carrying the same mass, but actually had these amazing improvements just based on that change in systemic load. So this is really good news, and I think it is an indication that we shouldn't always use the scales as a guideline, especially as a motivator. And I've written a blog about this, which is on our website if you want some further information. It goes into a little bit more detail. Now, so we talk about diet. Now we've got the exercise. So what's the right type of exercise? And this is where it does well, everything's a bit tricky, but this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. How do we exercise and when do we do it? Now, exercise needs to be at the right dosage. If you do too little, nothing changes. Too much and everything gets grumpy. So it needs to be just right, just like Goldilocks. So we talk about the Goldilocks principle a little bit, and that can be difficult to figure out. So to begin with, it's our job to make sure that you understand that you're loading yourself at the appropriate amount, and help you to move along at the right pace. But in time, what we teach you to do is monitor yourself so that you've got the ability and the knowledge to actually know when to progress and know when to hold back. There's a few simple rules that we follow, but the most important rule is the 24-hour rule. And we're happy for there to be some kind of pain when you're exercising and performing activities, but we just need to make sure that that pain settles within 24 hours of you completing the exercises. So acceptable level of pain, but then we really want it to go back to baseline, and that's how we know that you're actually safe. And this is one of the concepts that we do follow in the GLAD program. It's simple, but it's really effective.
Cool. And what probably needs to be said about about that point is that the idea of, sorry, just arranging ourselves, the idea of exercise and weight management and education in themselves probably aren't difficult concepts. It's knowing what to be educated about. You've got to get the right information first, and as Kim's just explained, that the information that's still out there, a lot of it is outdated, and if you rely on that, you're going to get pointed in the wrong direction. And the other thing is, it's hard to apply the right amount of exercise without knowing whether what you're doing is okay or not. And this is often where people run into problems, isn't it, with pain. And so if something hurts, should I keep going? Should I push harder? Or should I just completely retreat? And that's one of the things that people get out of doing the GLAD program, where there is, I guess you could call it mentoring in a sense, and the physios are there to say, we need to alter things a little bit, we need to change the progression so that you're not sore more than 24 hours later, or it's safe to be going at that point because things settle down within a certain length of time, and so we can continue to progress along those lines. So I think that's the beauty of getting the help. Yes, it's possible to do the exercise, but getting the dose right is hard, and that's something that we've probably learned together over the last couple of years of running GLAD programs. People definitely need help with that. Mm-hmm. So is that a fair comment? Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So and then once you've done the program once and you've got that knowledge and confidence of how much to work or how hard to work, then you can apply it yourself. You could almost look at the GLAD program as being like a 6-week mentoring program with measures at the start, measures at the finish that show what has changed in that period of time. So it's all the things we want to know about are measurable. Yeah. And the other thing that's really worth emphasising from what Kim said is that this new knowledge about osteoarthritis, it's not fringe stuff. It's science. It's current knowledge about the way that things work in the body, and this idea of low-grade systemic inflammation is not fringe science. You know, we're not alternative therapists. This is actually
this is fact.
It's fact. Yeah, that's right. And so much so that the talk of diet and knowledge and exercise are all part of the guidelines for GPs, the Royal Australian College of GPs, and the Royal Australian College of Surgeons too, but guidelines all over the world. So we're just applying what we know to be right and what the science says. So what we might do now, if anyone's got any other comments or questions, please shoot them through. We got a few questions in advance from interested people that have been talking with us about arthritis lately. And the first question that we thought we would talk about publicly, because this is a really common one that comes up, is a chap that's saying, my knee's bone on bone, so how am I expected to exercise if my knee is bone on bone? What would you say to that?
Yeah, and bone on bone is a really common almost like a catchphrase that's used publicly, and you hear it all the time. And the reality is that even when you've got no meniscus because maybe you've had surgery and had it removed, or there's some quite progressed osteoarthritic changes, there's always some cartilage in there. Always. There will always be some cartilage in there. And the best thing for that cartilage is actually having some load through it. So if it's really, really painful, we might need to start you off at a really small dosage, but exercise is always the number one thing that all knees should do first. And like I said,
hips.
And hips, sorry, I always say knees, but both. And probably ankles too.
Yeah.
So it's always the first thing, but we might have to really dial it back. The other thing we need to do with that is explain to people that have got that really advanced changes, and they've seen changes on x-ray, that pain doesn't always equal damage, and sometimes we need to pace it through that process.
It's a really tough one. And as Kim said, that kind of sentiment about bone on bone, it's talked about a lot. And I know a lot of doctors and surgeons talk in those terms. There's a lot that could be said about it. It's a really strong kind of term to be saying to someone.
We want to get rid of it.
We'd like to eliminate that from vocab, really, because it's misleading.
Yeah.
It is misleading.
There's always, and even if there's minimal cartilage left, there's always some. No matter who says what, there's always some. But even if there is not much, there's also synovial fluid in there. Now that synovial fluid is this, it's not just water, it's this thick, beautiful liquid that's got all these cells in it. So even that is providing a bit of a barrier between those two levels of bone.
And cushioning, yeah. And kind of taking that back to the program, where people start is going to be different depending on their level of pain, their baseline, their ability. So someone that does come in with a really painful knee that's really irritable and maybe has been told it's bone on bone, their starting point might be completely different to the person that has pain when they run but not pain when they walk. So everyone's starting, so it is customised in that sense. So the next question would be, I'm going to pose it to you again, Kim. This is going well, me asking you questions. I already go for a walk every day, so what more is the GLAD program going to do if I already exercise daily?
So there's a few levels to that, I guess, in that if you're walking every day, what sort of walking are you doing? What are you thinking about when you're walking? How does your knee feel? But what the GLAD program adds is the strength component. Okay, so we are specifically targeting muscle groups around the knee and hip. So we're working quads, hamstrings, glutes, adductors, all those muscles that are really imperative, and your core, in walking. And so we're going to specifically strengthen those muscles. And then we're going to use what we call neurodynamic exercise, which basically combines those strength exercises into more of a functional, patterned movement, and really think about how you're doing it. And the effects that you're going to get from that are going to flow onto your walking, and it'll make you walk faster with more confidence, maybe be able to do some stairs or walk on unstable surfaces. The number of people that I've had do the GLAD program that at week 3 or 4, they're like, Kim, I'm walking so much faster. So they were already walking, but now they're able to walk faster. And they also have the confidence to walk, like I said, on unstable surfaces or challenge themselves with stairs. And the other comment that I've had a few times is that I feel more confident on my knee when I'm walking. So previously they were walking 30 minutes a day and pushing themselves through it, but kind of really struggling and feeling their knee was a hindrance to them. A hamper? A picnic? But now they have more confidence in their knee. They're not worried that it's going to give way. So they're the changes that it can definitely make to your walking program. But if you're already walking every day, that's great. You've already taken that... you're already doing something to add to your decreasing your systemic inflammation and adding to your health.
Yeah, and the other thing might be too is the walking. If they've been walking at a certain rate for a while, is it enough to stimulate further change?
Yep.
So they might need
to be pushed.
Be pushed. And the other thing too, I'd argue that the GLAD program would do is it would help to find where those current baselines are, and and to push as appropriate, but also the education side of it too. Knowing when it's okay to push and when it's not okay to push, and giving a degree of confidence to be able to go and then progress maybe that walking.
Even the cartilage story that I talked about earlier. So knowing that every time you move that knee and your foot lands on the ground and you're getting impact through your knee, impact through your hip, that you're actually doing your cartilage good, it will completely change how you walk and how you move. So when you are walking, we go, oh, this is actually good for me. It might be a bit sore. I might feel like it's a bit like maybe limping a little bit. But if you can just think, oh, this is actually doing my knee good, it often changes how your knee then feels.
I've certainly had people that I've used the sponge analogy with, and the idea of when you're walking along, I don't know if you mentioned this before, but when you're walking along and when you put some weight down on it, you're squeezing a little bit of fluid out, and then when you take your weight off, it's sucking more of that good stuff back into the sponge. If you think about your cartilage that way, it completely changes how you think about your exercise, as you said. That's the value of the education component. Getting the right information, because it can completely change your point of view on what you're doing with your exercise. Ready for another question?
Sure.
Beautiful. I was hoping you were going to say that. And you kind of answered this before, but how long will it take to see a difference?
Yeah, and I think that's different for everyone. I think it depends on what your baseline level of fitness is and what your expectations and what your goals are. I'm going to make up a number here, but I would, this is a completely made up figure, but I would say that 80% of people that go through the GLAD program by week 3 or 4 feel like they're noticing a difference in something. It might not be pain, but it's generally function, and then some of them pain. So they're like, oh, it's not feeling as stiff, I'm not getting as much pain, but I'm also doing more. But reality is that at the end of a 6-week program, you're not cured. Okay, this is basically the start of the rest of your life, where you know that you have to continue exercising. The GLAD program is designed so that you can continue this at home independently. That's what the aim is that you get to the end of 6 weeks, and for most people, they've got a good solid base to form true habits and make really good change. We're looking at a minimum of 12 weeks, really. But you also will know by the end of that you need to continue that on in some way. It doesn't have to be the exact GLAD program forever, but there needs to be some form of exercise that occurs forever. Yeah.
And in the last annual report from GLAD, they talked about the reduction in pain of their 1,800 participants. It was quite a large number in Australia, and they were saying that the people that had hip OA had a reduction of, I think it was 31% of pain.
At 3 months.
At 3 months. And then at 1 year, it had actually increased further to 40%.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't clarify whether people had gone away and worked on it or not worked on it. But just to see that kind of change. So even though the 6 weeks is the bit that we probably focus on, it's beyond that. You can continue to see improvement, which is it's really exciting actually. And I don't know about you, but I used to think I was very much stuck in the traditional thinking about OA, that it was something that would continue to decline, that you probably would need something done.
Yeah, and we were just delaying that.
Yeah.
Let's strengthen up the muscles to protect the joint. That's exactly what I would say. Let's get the muscles a bit stronger. But then I didn't give them enough exercises to actually make the muscles stronger.
That's right.
So, because I didn't want to overload the joint and annoy it. So and it's kind of interesting. So I've been a physio for.
Oh, don't even guess, Kim.
At least 5 years. No. It's pushing on 17, 18 years, and this is the first time that I've actually really had 100% confidence in our program, I think, that I go, this is going to make changes, and it is researched, and it is supported by the evidence, and then the evidence that's emerging on almost a daily basis is really exciting and very cool, and it is all hopeful. So none of it is kind of like, oh, well, doom and gloom, you're stuffed. It's all looking positive, which is great.
It is. It's really good. And it kind of leads into the next question too. Why hasn't my GP told me about this program before sending me to the orthopaedic surgeon? If there is so much evidence behind it, if there is so much research, if this is the latest thinking.
Mm.
Why haven't I been? Has this been suggested to me?
I just think they don't know about it. So there are a lot of GPs that do know about it, a lot, and we're getting referrals from GPs now for that. When I've spoken to GPs, they're excited about it. They are so excited to have something they can confidently send their clients away to say this will help you. And yeah, the other thing is that GPs have got a lot of things to keep up to date with. They've got the whole body, and so they can't always be up to date with everything. But they do. They are. It is spreading, and they are learning about it. And the ones that do know about it, they're sending them here. To the GLAD program in general.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That's right. I just want to call out Elizabeth Gray. Thank you for watching. Craig Telford, you're a champ. Christy Amato and Sharon are watching as well, and Sharon says hi.
Oh, hi, Mum.
And one other question that we had was, my surgeon told me that I need a hip replacement. And this has come up a couple of times with us. My surgeon told me I need a hip replacement or a knee replacement. Are you saying that I won't need a knee replacement or hip replacement? And my answer to that would be, no, we're not saying that.
No, we're definitely not saying that. It's a really good surgery that has been practiced many times, possibly too many times. So when the time comes, or if the time comes that you need to have surgery, fantastic. Have huge confidence in that this surgery is generally going to help you, but they're done too early, and they're done without that first line level of treatment happening. And that's not really good enough. We need to get that exercise happening first. The other thing we know is that by doing the GLAD program or any high quality physio first and exercise, is that you're actually going to have better outcomes after your surgery than if you do nothing beforehand.
Yeah. And we were having this, I heard you having this discussion earlier in a group about, I came in on the tail end of it, but you were saying it's not like you have a knee replacement or a hip replacement and that's it. There's still work to be done.
A lot of work.
At the end of it. So it's a matter of, my concern, I suppose, with a lot of people that have hips or knees done is that they think, okay, I'm going to hand the responsibility over to the surgeon, they do their thing, and then I'm better. And it's not as simple as that. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done. And the question is, if you put in that work beforehand, are you going to still need to have the hip or the knee replacement?
And they did a study in the UK where they took a whole heap of people that were on the waiting list for a total knee on the NHS. And they put 100 people through an exercise program. And at the end of 12 months, 75 people had not had their joint replaced because they didn't need to. So that's huge. And that was on a public wait list, so they were sitting there waiting anyway. So they put them through an exercise program and then they didn't need it. So we're not quite sure why our medical system hasn't jumped on board with the program yet, because it actually makes sense financially, not just from an ethical point of view and a pain point of view, but also financially. And money talks in our society. So maybe soon they'll get on board.
Yeah, I hope so.
That would be nice.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it? Not just from as you say, an ethical point of view. I think ethically it should be the first thing that people have to do, but also financially. I've got a question here from Bronwyn. Thank you, Bron, for tuning in. And she asks, can people use GLAD to reduce shoulder pain too? It's a good question. It
is a good question, which... Well, the argument would go is that if we exercise and be healthier and decrease your systemic inflammation, that would actually have a flow-on effect to your shoulder. However, the GLAD program is not targeted to upper body exercise, and so if you had shoulder arthritic changes, we would tailor a specific exercise program to you that involves shoulder loading as well. Because there's no upper body exercises in the program. No,
but you can take exactly the same principles and apply it to the shoulder or the elbow or really any joint that's osteoarthritic. It's still about educating, understanding the role of pain and what it's doing. And interestingly enough, I would argue the diet changes are just as important for a shoulder problem as it is for a knee problem. Going back to what Kim was talking about before, reducing systemic inflammation, and then loading it and progressively loading it and starting from a baseline and gradually increasing it.
Yeah.
So same principles. We just couldn't call it the GLAD program. That's all.
No.
We could call it the MAD program, or I won't get into that. Hey, Sue's watching us too. So we're at the half an hour mark. So unless anyone's got any other questions, I've just a few things that are worth mentioning. If you do have questions, just keep sending them through, because I'm happy to stick around and continue talking. But I just wanted to make sure that I got a couple of messages through before people start turning off. If you do want more information from us about what we do here, or the GLAD program, or anything that we've talked about, don't hesitate to get in contact with us. Give us a call on 1300 730 574. I'll put it in the comments section. Give us a call or message us on Messenger, and we clearly like to talk about it. We'd be happy to chat with you about it and help you to work out what the right path is for you, and whether GLAD is the right path for you or something different. And it also means we can speak about your specific situation too, so get in contact with us. If you go to our website too, which is www.adelaidewestphysio.com.au, there's a page on the GLAD program and a few other blog articles that would be well worth having a look at if you're kind of weighing it up and thinking about what you need to do with your hip or your knee. And we've just recently introduced a payment plan too, because we want this to be accessible to people. We know how good it is, and you can tell from our enthusiasm about the program. And for Kim to say, to have 100% conviction in a program for the first time in her 17-year career. I've been, this is my 26th year of being physio. Yeah. I know it doesn't look like it, but it is my 26th year. And it's really exciting. It's really cool to have something come along that you can really get excited about, and you can see results, and you can hear people getting excited.
And considering
too.
when we were at uni, they were teaching us to put machines with electrical currents going through the knee to interfere with pain pathways and a whole heap of garbage. and now...
And we're doing something that's actually
working.
Proven to work. Yeah. So if you're, having said that, and maybe slightly controversial, if you're seeing a physio and they're putting machines on you for your knee or your hip arthritis, I think you need to ask them some fairly serious questions. Show me the evidence, because there really is none.
And if you want us to show you the evidence, we actually can.
We've got bucket loads. Yeah. So getting back to that payment plan, we want people to be able to access this. We want to see as many people as we can go through a program of this type before they go for start thinking about a hip or knee replacement. So get on it, give us a buzz, and we can tell you more about it. And the other thing too is we've been working on something for the last little while. For people that are at the point of thinking, do they need a hip or a knee replacement? Because it's something that does come up a heck of a lot. It's a question we get asked a lot. So we've put together a guide that's got lots of really good information. If anyone's interested in that, just either shoot through a message if you don't want to put it publicly, or leave a comment, even just a why or a yes please or something in the comments, and we'll make sure we get it out to you. And I think this is a really, really good, not just because I helped write it, but I think it's one of the kind of things that's been missing for a long time. That's been a very grey area at times. When should I get a knee replacement done? Oh, you'll know. Well, it's not quite as simple as that. There are really good criteria that you can apply to it now. Like, have you done the first line treatment? Have you gone through an exercise program that is decent? Yeah.
And enough.
Yeah. Not just a few quads exercises twice a week, but something that's decent and loading enough.
And do you understand what osteoarthritis is?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you still think it's bone on bone, then you're probably not quite ready. We need to give you a bit more information first.
Yeah. So if it's interesting to you, if you're at that point of starting to think about hips and knee replacements, or even if you think that might be somewhere down the track that you want to just start, I'd encourage you to read this. So we really hope that's been helpful. We clearly have invested a lot of our time into getting this GLAD program going because we really believe in it, and we've got 5 physios here now that provide the program, who all talk the same language, who all have the same philosophy on it, so you're getting consistency, which I think is really, really important. And our sessions are mainly through the day, around kind of morning and early afternoon. But if you're working and you need to do this out of hours, we do have a waiting list, but we can make it work with our existing exercise groups in the evenings and on Saturdays. So that's just something that we can talk more about. But certainly the sessions through the day, they're great. They're dedicated GLAD sessions, and I think that's one of the things that I've really liked too, is the cohort of people. When you get people together that have got the common goal of trying to help the hip or the knee, even if they're at different places or different levels, the banter really helps, and the encouraging each other, and Kim can be educating someone on something, and there's other people that are learning from that as well. So yeah. Happy with that? Anything else you want to say?
No.
Any other questions?
I mean, I could keep going, but no. I need to do some work that way.
We could keep going. I've quite enjoyed this. It's been good. I hope it's been useful to you guys. As I say, if you've got any questions, just get in contact with us. We're more than happy to have a chat anytime. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.